about you, but the past 4 weeks have been a roller coaster of emotions for me, and it's been a time of just a lot of rapid change. And it means that I'm trying new things as well. I am trying to grow out a beard. I think like mostly unsuccessfully, but like I'm still gonna stay in there. I'm trying to cook, and I have only set off the fire alarm twice, both times before noon, and my roommate is giving me a lot of grace. I am trying to clean up my house and things like that. Something that is the newest adventure to me and that has brought a surprising amount of excitement into my life is this little guy. These are my new basil babies. Um, I have a friend and a neighbor nearby who reached out last week and said like, hey, I am totally overgrown with my basil plants. Like, could you use some? And so I respected the rules of social distancing, but I went over and I clipped some of his clippings and am waiting for them to grow roots. And let me tell you, I have never been more focused on a plant's growth than I have in the last 10 days with these basil plants. It's like kind of ridiculous, but I'm very, very excited. And I think that it was this week when I was kind of reflecting on that it reminded me of a story that I wanted to share with you all. And so this is my grandma, the lovely young woman with the scarf around her neck. My grandma is like, I call her Nani Ji, which is the Hindi word for your mom's mom. And she is like the best person ever. So when I think about my grandma, I think about her hair, which reaches down to the floor and always has since she was in her like 20s, and which she braids every single morning, which is a fascinating ritual to watch. I think about the fact that even though she is like half my size, her hugs like completely envelop me and squeeze. I don't know if they squeeze the life out of me or put the life into me, but like it's magical. And I think about her smile, which she can be a little bit embarrassed about because she doesn't have all of her teeth, but which I think provides so much warmth and joy to a room. And um, that picture is from 2014, which was when she moved to the United States to live with my family after my grandfather passed away in India. And I was so excited to live with her or to have her in the States. But I was also so worried. That picture was actually from her dropping me off at the airport because I was headed to grad school for a year out of the country. And so I wasn't going to be around. My family is all like older and doing their own things. The neighborhood that I grew up in is a suburban neighborhood in Montgomery County with like houses and lots of space in between them. And it's not very diverse and people aren't very connected. And so I was just worried about what she was going to spend her time doing. And so as soon as I got to grad school, I started calling like all the time to find out what was going on and if she was okay. And she started, her first hobby was gardening. And so she transformed our deck into this like giant herb garden. And her favorite plant was, you guessed it, basil. And it's because of the smell and it was because of how fast it grew. And she loved to tell me about the progress on the deck. She also very proudly started to take daily walks around the neighborhood and would tell me all about the things that she saw and the people that she met. Um, we got to the point, I think like a month in, where the basil had kind of outgrown what she was able to like keep up with. And so then she transitioned to deciding that she was just going to carry basil plants around with her on her walks and hand them to people as she went. And she was like telling me stories about this, and I kind of gave her the skeptical, like, oh, that's great. And like secretly terrified of the moment that I would get home and be associated with the small lady that like always had plants in her hands. Like I was going to be associated with the plant lady. And that was like very nerve wracking for me. Fast forward a year to fall of 2015, and I returned back to the United States. Was really excited to see her. No one pointed me out as associating with the plant lady. But within about 4 weeks, my grandma was hospitalized. And it turns out that she developed ovarian cancer. And after about like 3 to 4 really hard weeks, she ended up passing away. And it was a really, really tough moment for me and for my family. For me, I felt a lot of guilt and a lot of concern about like what the last year had been. And I remember at that point, I took about a week off of school to come home and make arrangements and just like try to be there in a way that I felt like I hadn't been. for the previous year. And on the first day, someone knocked on the door, and I went over and answered it. And it was a neighbor that I probably had not seen in like 10 years. And she was like, "Hey, like, where is your grandma? Because I've been waiting for her to come by for like the past 3 weeks, and she hasn't come by." And I had the hard job of telling her that she had just passed away. And then at that moment, this neighbor did something that I just did not expect. And she asked if she could come inside. And she sat down on the couch with me, and she asked a bunch of questions, and she sat with me, and she told all of these stories about the time that she and my grandma had spent together, like out in their front yard, and the recipes that she was trying that she was really excited to share with my grandma, and things like that. And I think I was just completely blown away by a woman who I had barely said like any words to over the course of 20 years, and the extent to which she was impacted and connected to my grandma. And over the course of the next week, every day without fail, neighbors came by, and it was just a cycle of every single day talking to folks and informing them about what had happened, and them sharing all of these amazing stories about their times together. Um, and at the funeral, they self-organized to show up. I think that over the course of that week, I probably met more neighbors than I had in my entire life growing up in that neighborhood. And so, I think I spend a lot of time trying to connect with people by figuring out the exact right thing to say and the exact support to offer. And I think that that's something that I've always done, and it's something that I've done a lot at Thread as well. And I think that if I'm being honest, in these past 4 weeks, I have never felt more powerless. It is really hard right now to feel like I am equipped to give people the things that they need. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. And I think that last week with this baby basil plant, I got a friendly reminder from my grandma that it is not about the exact right thing or the exact need. Because for my grandma, everyone needed basil, like regardless of whether you asked for it or not. And she decided that she was going to consistently show up every single day with a hug and a smile and a plant in her hands. And through that, she wove together this amazing fabric and network around her. And that eventually then became a rallying point for us as a family. And so I don't know. If you're like me right now, it seems like there are a million things to do inside of Thread and outside of Thread, and it feels like there are more constraints than ever before. It feels like there are zero things that I can do. And what I'm going to challenge you all to do, and what I'm going to commit to do with you all, is to try to break that cycle of thinking and instead to reflect on in this moment the unique capability that you have and the one thing that you can offer consistently to the community around you. So I want you to ask yourself right now and this week, what is your basil? Like, what is the thing that you are going to focus on in the upcoming weeks to offer consistently, steadily, with warmth and love, care to the community around you, both inside of Thread and outside of Thread? You all are incredible individuals. And I think that in a moment when it's harder than ever to see your own value, I want you to remember that there is so much that you can do by just offering up simple gestures. And so Sophia is going to talk to you about the spaces that are available and the priorities and the initiatives and the things that we can and should get done as a community. But if you're feeling overwhelmed at any point during tonight or in the coming weeks, like step back and ask yourself what is the one thing that you can offer. And if you're having trouble figuring out what that is, reach out, like put up a flag, ask your coach, ask your community manager, come to a Thread space and ask staff, because we're really excited to help discover your basil with you.